All right. Hello, Andrew. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today. We will be as brief as possible, maybe 15-ish minute overview of the Analyst Academy and a few wrinkles we're throwing in for August. The August cohort, I will flip through a deck giving some of the basics of Analyst Academy. And then really the core reason why we try to do these is to answer any specific questions that you have. So any questions you would like to ask at the conclusion of that deck, either feel free to raise your hand, go off mute, ask them live, or if it's something you'd like to ask anonymously, you can drop that in the chat as well too. So without further ado, I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. So if you have been in or around the buy side for any amount of time, you probably know the inside joke of the question that strikes terror in the hearts of young analysts. And that's the seemingly innocuous question of go take a look at this stock and let me know what you think, right? This was a question I was asked when I, started on the desk at my first hedge fund in the second week, day one of the second week. And it seems like an innocuous question because, of course, I can go take a look at a company, take a look at a stock, and put together something. But the question is, will that something be institutional quality, be institutional grade? Will I touch on all the questions, the key points, and construct a coherent thesis? And so, more than any slide, this simple point really creates an organizing structure around what we will try to do over the next 6 weeks and 60 hours with Analyst Academy. We'll give you the tools to help you better answer this question. I think there are kind of various degrees of preparation for this job. Generally in my experience, many of the firms in this industry are more in the learn through osmosis. It's an apprenticeship business. The translation really is figure it out on your own, kid. Go work through 20 ideas, make a bunch of mistakes, maybe not get yelled at, but certainly deal with a lot of passive aggressive behavior. Some firms have built internal academies with more centralized training, where it's 0.72 Academy, Balyasny Bridger, the Citadel Associate Program. Really what we've attempted to do, I think done fairly well over the last 3 years, is put a fourth hat in the ring here and an open access fundamental Edge Analyst Academy. And so what we've tried to do is teach these structured day one systems, processes, and approaches via our virtual Analyst Academy that would be similar in quality and grade to what you may get internally at a hedge fund. So how do we do that? It's a 6-week, 60-hour open access cohort structure. What we really will do in this program is speak to the demands of the institutional equity research process. Roughly 2/3 of the students in each cohort, the cohorts end up anywhere usually between 40 and 70 per cohort 6 times a year. These are experienced individuals. We've seen a steady uptick over 3 years. Now, roughly 1/3 of the students in each cohort are actually sponsored by their firms. And so firms tend to send new hires, firms are really across the spectrum, from tiger cubs to multi-managers to the long tail of small startups and family offices and long onlys will sponsor their students to this program. Now, roughly 1/3 are in the candidate seat. And so while we will speak to separately the interview process, what we will speak to primarily is how to really create an institutional grade, institutional quality model, research process, and thesis. So that's really the core of what we will do. We always give the caveat, learning how to make money in the stock market and in individual stocks is a long-term journey. It's the ultimate, 10,000 hour rule. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to really develop some degree of mastery. Some get there, some don't. And so certainly, this is not a day trade your way to success. We're not going to teach you how to trade zero-day options or meme stocks. What we will hopefully teach you is a starting point, a driver's education of how to build and conduct deep due diligence. And a lot of that comes from our journey. My journey having kind of been in the trenches for 13 years in the Tiger Cub investment process, and then the multi-manager, multi-PM approach for firms. And so that's really that. This is really the process and approach. And I'll take a moment to have Andrew Carr introduce himself as well.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the info session. My name is Andrew Carr. I'm an analyst trainer here at Fundamental Edge. Been here for about a year and a half and counting. And my experience in some ways is complementary to Brett's in that Brett's analyst education was in the single manager setup at Maverick, and my analyst upbringing was in the multi-manager setup. So in this way, we have a pretty complementary overview of what the analyst journey looks like in both the single and multi-manager construct. But we have another instructor as well who has a lot of insight into what it is to be in the long only seat.
Yeah, so Paul Johnson has been an adjunct professor at Columbia for 30 years. And we intentionally tried to build heterogeneity in the core instructor team. As Andrew said, if you are going to Balyasny or Citadel, Andrew was sort of, while I was a PM in those models, I tended to run capital a little bit more long-term oriented. Andrew was really raised in the higher velocity approach, and Paul Johnson's really sort of, done a lot of thinking and teaching on business quality, ROIC, long-term investing philosophies. And so I think the three of us come at the same question with different perspectives. And so really the ultimate goal of our program is to deliver a training program that prepares analysts for the rigors of the buy-side seat. Ultimately, I'd say probably 85% of individuals through the program are either in the buy-side seat or aiming towards the buy-side seat. We see a few hobbyists who are kind of, managing their own pool of capital or family capital that want to employ the institutional approach to investing, but primarily that's the focus of the program. The Academy really is split into 4 areas. It's a self-paced core curriculum. So we have 1,500 slides of self-paced curriculum, and everything from valuation to build a model to think about the short side of the book, consumed on your own time with 12 months access. That's about 30 hours of core curriculum. You'll have access to templates and case studies and underlying Excel docs. Some of these are models that I used on the buy side that became my certified IP when I left. Other models that we built up over time, various pitches and models, et cetera. So you kind of get a sense of at least one person's quality of work from a fund. This is supported by a live session, so a live kickoff that will happen next Monday, wrap session, office hours, and some one-on-one coaching with Andrew or Paul. We'll supplement this more because I certainly have lived experience in certain areas, a lot of lived experience, but Andrew, Paul, and I don't have every answer to every question. We try to stay within our lane intellectually, speak to our lived experience. So we've supplemented the core program with 21 recorded guest lectures, people like, well-known people like Howard Marks and Ricky Sandler, but also experts from the macro world and the quant world and various other perspectives that we think are really complementary, supplementary to the core curriculum. At times contradict with the core curriculum, which is great, right? We like to really bring different perspectives in so that students can adopt and determine from what we put in front of you, your own process, your own sense of truth when it comes to the right process and approach to investing. And then we supplement that with community for the third of students that are seeking jobs, connections with employers, access to talent hub services, some alumni exclusive in-person events. Our quarterly New York City Mixer has been a highlight, some exclusive virtual events, stock pitch competitions in the fall and spring, fall and spring. What is the core curriculum? Just to give a kind of brief overview, we really split it into 12 modules. One of my favorite reviews of the program one time is there's no book that teaches this stuff, and I definitely agree. There's no book that teaches this stuff. There's no book that kind of puts together these more practical modules on how to conduct approach. And this certainly wasn't 100% creation. These were different modules that I went through in different firms, different training programs over time, things that I've developed iteratively to put together really 12 modules from first understanding why individual stocks move, what are the key triggers that cause stocks to move up and down, to building a framework to develop a thesis from start to finish, how to, some frameworks for doing high quality institutional grade deep dive research, to putting that into modeling and that critical translation of your qualitative insights to your quantitative outputs in the model, how that feeds back into the thesis development process, how to think about valuation and what's in the stock and why expectations are so important, thinking about the critical time period of earnings season, meeting management and the short side of the book, and covering an industry, bringing new ideas and pitching those ideas. So that's really the core curriculum. And each one of those modules will go through a core module with guest speakers and supplemental readings. One of the core chassis of the program is a 9-step thesis development process, where we'll go through how to develop expertise to build a promising idea, to construct a model, structure due diligence, expectations, and valuation work, all the way to kind of putting your thesis together, presenting it, getting feedback, and monitoring. You won't come to this program and listen to what we say and come away with any ideas at all, right? And so if you think you're going to come to, spend time with 3 hedge fund people and come away with great longs and shorts, I will disappoint you right now. What we will give you is a chassis, a process to understand as you're looking through a stock of your choice, how to go through and conduct institutional grade due diligence. We'll give some breakdowns of what a standing start might look like and how to organize your own process. We'll give you supplementary materials of experience that is done, some supplemental videos. Ultimately, it's about 60 hours of curriculum if you include the curriculum and the guest speaker sessions. There's some supplemental videos that we've done over time, recordings of past pitch competitions, case studies on various stocks that often we've done as open webinars, and then kind of made those alumni exclusive after a period of time. Our guest speaker sessions, supplementary readings. So if you really want to go deep, this can be a total of about 100 hours of curriculum, which is why we give access to 12 months to really go through it. We have vastly received much more feedback. This is an incredibly deep program rather than thin program. So there's a lot of meat on the bone here from a content perspective. This is a calendar that we'll send out. We'll effectively meet for the kickoff session next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then following that, we will have office hours for 4 Tuesdays through August into September with a live wrap. What happens in these office hour sessions? Really, whatever you want. We are here to be of service to you. Over having done 14 cohorts, we used to say, hey, we're going to talk about valuation on August 12th. Some people made it through that module, some didn't. And so we really kind of have a any question, anytime rule in the process. If you want to talk about, American Eagle's move off of the Sydney Sweeney trade and how to understand whether that's a long or a short, we'll give you some frameworks and analysis tools to try to do that. If you want to talk about, whether you think multi-managers will continue to raise capital, we'll give you our opinions, which are just that, opinions. If you can't make these office hours, they're all recorded and uploaded to the Teachable system. You can submit questions into a Dropbox before, and Andrew and Paul do selective one-on-one coaching. We give every student gets one free session, and then we have additional sessions at a pretty attractive rate. So who will you see in the speaker sessions? You'll see people you know well, like a Howard Marks and a Ricky Sandler and Aswat Damodaran and a Ted Seides. You also see people you probably don't know as well, people like Derek Vincent, who's a portfolio manager at Verishian Fund Management, Rocky Cahan, who's an equity research strategist at, to me, one of the most respectable quant research firms, David Zion, who's a leader in stock comp and forensic accounting, Lisa Mogi, who I worked with at D.E. Shaw, was a mindset coach, Steve Galbraith, who was my mentor at Maverick. And so people out of our individual networks over time that we have tapped to provide supplementary sessions that give a different perspective on elements of the fundamental equity research process, interviewed by me, by Andrew, by Paul. We've also done more on the Cutting Edge. Guest Speakers Cutting Edge is a webinar series that we began in September to really explore AI in the investment research process. And so we're bringing out a kind of a separate AI intensive, which would be a 30 to 50 hour intensive. But part of what we'll be doing through our office hour sessions is starting each of these sessions with a little bit of an AI session. So we're bringing in some snippets from that program to try and start the pathway towards at least exploring which of the areas of the fundamental research process should be augmented with AI and which importantly shouldn't. And so for each of you, that's an individual decision, but we want to sort of leverage some of the work we're doing on that. A community with New York Mixers and Talent Hub Access and the Fundamental Edge Forum. In the past, we've done some live in-person events, which we always kind of sort of consider. Logistics-wise, everything is hosted in a learning management system with Zoom office hours. And so ultimately, again, wrapping up, really the goal of the program is at the end of this program, will you be an alpha generating moneymaker? Very unlikely. Are you likely to take what would be a 3-year painful ramp process as a junior analyst and compress it down to 18 months? Certainly that's more in the realm of possibility. And as it relates to careers, as it relates to interviewing process, as it relates to really installing a structured process-based investment approach, we find that's valuable. And the belief in that gets questioned sometimes by this era in markets and such. I think we remain steadfast, and certainly my friends and colleagues that are still on the desk remain steadfast to the approach that there actually is still modeling and alpha and modeling and reading primary docs and doing deep fundamental research, building a grounded fundamentals first investment process, not chasing the hottest thing, chasing the Yipit number, or chasing some meme. That ultimately rigorous disciplined fundamental equity research is the core input to ultimate output. With that, we'll take some questions. For joining us today, we'll send this out as well too. We'll send the deck out. AUG info 10. We'll give you 10% off for enrollment. And with that, happy to take any questions. I went a little bit above my promised 15 minutes. Andrew Carr, what did I miss from any of that? What would you add, append, or disagree with?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty fulsome overview. Couple things I might add. I know some people might have questions right now. Other people might think of a question later today. So I'm just going to drop a link in the chat if you want to hop on Zoom for 15 minutes in case you think of a question later. Another thing is, people say, well, could this be for me? I work at place XYZ and, I just don't know. We've actually been quite surprised by a couple of things. One is we have people who work at, whether it's a family office or a long only or a single manager or multi-manager. And what tends to happen is they go through our program and then the firm reaches back out to us. Now, you can debate if it was a great idea to make as our core customers the most cynical, skeptical people in the world. But I think what I take from it is that the training that we provide is something that withstands that level of scrutiny and kind of gives you the kinds of tools that have currency in different types of investing seats. So we have a question here from Pierre who asks, what is the difference between this program and other options such as Wall Street Prep and Wall Street Prep Value Investing? Also, when will the winter cohort start? Many thanks. I'm happy to take a swing at the difference between this and the applied value investing one, Brett, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So the difference between this and that is applied value investing, we tend to, so it's also done, there's a lot of material from Fundamental Edge in that program as well. There are a couple of differences that I would point out. One is that the applied value investing program has much more of Paul Johnson's content on topics such as competitive advantage, business quality, things like that. And what it doesn't have is some of our modules on topics such as why stocks move up and down, short selling, and then kind of a grounding introduction called Life on the Buy Side, which helps people understand not just where they work and what the constraints are of working at a long only or a single manager or multi-manager, but also helps you glean some insight into the constraints or incentives for other market participants who are at those other types of firms. So in the applied value investing program, um, that's much more on the back burner. That's not in that program. But if you're pursuing an institutional investment management seat, then Academy would be a more relevant one. We have the winter cohort, I believe, begins in November, um, and I think that's that. The other thing is Wall Street Prep has some modeling courses, but one differentiation that we have in Analyst Academy is that many programs that are available in the world show people maybe how to pitch a stock or get an initial thesis together. What really separates Analyst Academy from some of the other offerings that are out there in the world is number one, we have a lot of material on what to do when a position is live in the portfolio. So the pitch is done, the name is in the book. How do you monitor your position? How do you see if your thesis has played out? How do you think about if risk reward has changed? How do you sit down with your PM and say we should add or we should get out of the position? What's that conversation like when you're right? What's that conversation like when you're wrong? These are the kinds of things that we go over in our material. And on the topic of pitching, we're quite fortunate that Paul Johnson co-authored literally the book on pitching stocks called "Pitch the Perfect Investment." So we think we're pretty well covered on that front. Tasif asks, sorry, my role, but it's a great question. Is this a program for analysts who are already on the buy side, or can this be helpful for folks who are looking to break in? Well, it absolutely can be helpful for folks who are looking to break in because many firms where you will interview will give you a case study, and the case study will look something like, take a look at the stock and let me know what you think. And you're going to see that there's a lot in common between the types of frameworks that are in Analyst Academy and the types of things that are expected in the case studies. In fact, since we are on the webinar, I'll just drop in the chat a webinar that Brett and I did last year about breaking in, and that has some of our collected insights. But that's much more about like the process of breaking in. If you want to go through the meat and potatoes of actually getting together a compelling stock pitch and the associated research, then that's definitely Analyst Academy.
And I would say make one important stipulation. If you are sponsored by your firm, then we close off that track. And so the breaking in or interviewing process is exclusively open to self-pay students. I think you probably respect that, understand that approach. I think a lot of the breaking in part of the reason why we focus so much on the process is when I was interviewing analysts, it was kind of the core question, whether explicit or implicit, is can this person do the job? Can they bring to the interview process a model, a thesis that is in line with the caliber of work that my existing analyst team is creating? And so, building a really thoughtful thesis on a name, I think, is helpful for the interview process, and certainly helpful as you become the analyst in the seat doing the job. I had one, Andrew. As someone, there's a private question. As someone coming from sales and trading who has limited financial modeling experiences, now I landed a seat at a long-short equity fund as an analyst. Do you think this course is meant for me, or would it be too advanced? Would you recommend ramping up on anything before? Thanks. I would say it wouldn't be too advanced in the sense that you landed on the seat, and so the demands of your seat are going to be very much in line with the course. In this instance, if you have minimal Excel fluency, we generally would point people towards a more introductory Excel model. We do have a section in our modeling program where we talk about building a scratch model and some basics of financial modeling. That in totality is closer to a three-hour approach. But we go through the basics pretty quickly because most of our students, that would be a bit redundant to most of our students given the expertise level. Many of our students spend 2 years banking, 2 years private equity, and just landed in a long short equity seat. And so it'd be a little slow to sit and spend 3 hours talking about how, depreciation and amortization flows through the three financial statements. They would probably kill us or be upset at us if they wasted 3 hours doing that. So if you have less experience, I would point you towards like a Wall Street prep basic modeling course, training the street basic modeling course. Those are generally in the couple $100 range as a prereq.
We've got a question in the chat. I have a non-traditional background. I'm a data scientist. How complementary are these frameworks to that kind of background? I would say actually there's a growing cohort of our Analyst Academy students who have data science backgrounds and maybe who work as research analysts at funds. So what I mean by that is sometimes there will be sector data analysts who support a team and provide insight and chunk through data. And so they develop a level of familiarity with the kind of data that matters. Why more and more people with this sort of background do Analyst Academy is to establish a common frame of reference or common language so that they can understand the genesis of the kinds of requests that they triage every day at work. So it's not just, can you see if there's a pattern of XYZ in this data set, but really starting to think about why might that be important, and then actually kind of igniting proactivity in the data scientists to say, hey, I noticed this, was wondering if you thought this might be important. So we've seen a growing level of that. I would say it's absolutely complementary.
Yeah, and to sort of validate that, we work with a number, we don't disclose clients, we work with a number of large multi-manager clients, and a couple of those regularly send new data science hires to the program. Because there is, data scientists and fundamental people come from two different worlds. And so blending those two perspectives, um, creating that shared framework is important. I'll give you one sort of framework, Daniel, that I would point you to that. There's this sort of paradox in fundamental investing that our PMs as analysts ask us to be the resident expert on a name, right? They'll point a finger and say, I want you to be the smartest person in the world on NVIDIA. It's like, okay, I'm going to go learn everything there is to know about NVIDIA, which implies a comprehensive, exhaustive, deep knowledge of the company. On the other hand, they'll say, we want to figure out the three key things that are going to move the stock. And so you're kind of sitting there, it's like, well, what is it? Do you want to have the comprehensive knowledge, or do you want me to focus on the three key triggers, pray to optimize this case? And the answer is both, right? You want to see the forest, and you also want to see the individual trees. For the data scientist, you generally will not have the time and bandwidth to do the deep exhaustive experience, a deep exhaustive analysis. But that distillation to what's going to move the stock is really important. So you're sitting with your data dashboard or working with your fundamental team, understanding that framework and understanding that in each stock, there are a couple of variables that are really going to move the stock. Often those will be the same every quarter. Often those will fluctuate and change over time so that you can more proactively be surfacing ideas. A lot of the teams that I think I've worked with data scientists, that I think high performing data scientists, they're less order takers of fundamental person says this, give the work back. They're more a proactive, integrated team member, almost sort of seeking out inflections, understanding what the fundamental team is looking for, and being an extra set of eyes and ears on idea generation, key data sets that are inflecting, and why that inflection matters so much to the downstream fundamental investment case. That being said, we won't teach you how to do data science. We won't teach you how to do Python because I don't know.
Don't rely on us for that. We have our lane, we stick to it.
All right. Any other questions? Any other FAQs, Andrew, that we usually get that we didn't get this time?
Well, we actually just got a live buzzer beater one here in the chat. Have stressed or distressed public credit analysts on the program, and how relevant would it be? We have had even institutional credit investors go through the program. And as you can understand, that since there are different asset classes, there are certain aspects of the program that are less relevant to the day-to-day of a credit analyst, but the frameworks that do overlap with the day-to-day of a credit analyst are quite useful, and we've gotten great feedback from credit analysts.
Yeah, we'll get frameworks to understand the industry, understand a company, understand a management team, create forecast metrics. Certainly the expression of your thesis will be different. It'll be less of an earnings season focus, catalyst, mean reversion. 3-year thesis to be more focused on whether the workout or credit documents, et cetera. And so we won't get you 100% of the way there, but maybe we'll get you 70%, 80% of the way there. And and then I think there are other avenues to sort of learn the specifics, whether that's a textbook or Michael Gatto is one of our guest speakers in the program. So I point you towards that guest speaker session for credit analysts, and he has I think a fantastic book on credit that could be a nice supplement. So in the past, we've sort of, with credit analysts, we've said, we'll come to the program and then read these 2 textbooks. And that's kind of been our very sort of, duct tape approach to teaching people credit. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, Brett at Fundament Edge or Andrew at Fundament Edge. Other than that, I think the program serves a very specific use case. If that resonates with you and where you're at in your career, we'd love to have you. We try not to overpromise on what we can do. We try to stick with our lane and do what we do as well as we can. And we'll have a lot of fun doing it. So those for which this resonates, we will meet next Monday for the live kickoff session. So thanks for joining us, and hope to see some of you soon.